We're excited to announce our new initiative, the Women in IoT Club Conference, a conference designed to celebrate the women within our industry and the innovations they are driving to deliver the wider IoT vision.
The Women in IoT Club Conference invites everyone facilitating innovation in the industry to come together for the same common interest. From founders and diversity and inclusion experts to engineers and researchers, the list is endless.
We are still welcoming speakers and any women who would like to participate to share their thoughts.
We'd love to hear from you. To find out more details about the conference, please check out the link in the comments below.
Welcome to the IoT podcast show. I'm your host, Tom White. Today, this is part 2 of the Nordic Semiconductor special, where we'll be talking about short-range technologies and applications for IoT in general. Today, we're joined by Svein-Egil Nielsen and Paal Kastnes. Svein is the CTO and Paal is the Technical Marketing Manager at Nordic. Welcome to the IoT podcast show. Thank you for coming on, guys.
Thank you for inviting, Tom. It's great to be on.
Yeah, thank you, Tom. It's nice to be here.
Excellent. And this is actually part 2 of the podcast. So we had Martin Lezand on the first Nordic Semiconductor podcast show, and that was really, really interesting. Svein, if you could give a little bit about your background to some of our listeners and explain how you got into this world and your position at Nordic, that would be great.
Yeah, so I've been working for Nordic Semiconductor since 2001 in different roles. I've been in sales, marketing, operations, and now most recently in the last 10 years, I'm responsible for all development activities at Nordic. I'm the CTO and Executive Vice President of R&D. I also deal with the strategy aspects of our business. So I've been doing IoT, or what we used to talk about more like Internet of my things, for many, many years. And it's so great to be on the show, Tom, because this is something I'm actually a little bit passionate about talking about. So thank you for inviting again.
Great. Thank you. It's good to hear. And Paul, how about yourself?
Yeah, so I've been with Nordic a little bit shorter, 2015, but I've been working in the semiconductor business for in the embedded space since 1998. So a bit of a track record and done a lot of different things. I started out doing engineering work and moved over to working with sales, doing marketing, and now I'm working with the product management team, where we're looking at the long-term product strategies, what we're going to do, the products, but also I'm taking care of a lot of the outbound things that we do, trade shows, tours where we go talk to customers and so on. So a little bit of different things, to put your fingers on.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah, I mean, I think we all share a passion clearly for IoT, and I've been around since we called it M2M, and before that, but and a long, long time ago. So what we're here to talk about today is what Nordic are doing in short-range technologies specifically, and I'm really keen to learn a little bit more about that. If we could dive straight in, and it's fine, if you could give an overview and just explain to me why Nordic entered this market and where are you guys up to right now with this?
I think that we always were in the IoT market. We were one of those early ones that did things before it was even called the IoT. We always been focused on doing ultra low power wireless connectivity. And as we've grown bigger, the portfolio of connectivity standards we support, it just keep growing. So we were always in the space and we targeted different applications. I think one of the things that is important with the IoT is low power. Typically, we talk about sensors or some data that's been analyzed in the field, maybe battery operated, and some of the use cases that has emerged in the last years wasn't possible unless you could actually get to a power consumption and battery sizes that made sense. So we've been in the IoT space for many years and been a staunch defender and advocate for the importance of IoT. And I think to that point is that I feel in the last couple of years, we got a little bit of redemption because people thought that the IoT was dead and it was all about AI and big compute and cloud. But it turns out that the IoT is by far dead. It is really real, and it's exploding in terms of volumes and applicability.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you so much for that. I think you're right. You know, people have mentioned in the past about, you know, well, where are all these IoT devices, and what is the issue that we've got, you know, with consolidation, right, of different vendors and a different uniform ways of bringing things together. We had Rob Tiffany on from Ericsson in the past on the show, and he talked about a common understanding and getting past some of these barriers. So I 100% agree. You know, this is far from over. You know, we're barely scraping at the surface. So I'm glad we're in agreement on that. Paal, anything to add on what Svein has mentioned there from your standpoint in the business?
No, I think you covered it quite well. It is something that we are very passionate about, and we've been driving things forward for a long time, and we've been doing things that when we did it, people didn't see why we decided to go with this. We started out very early looking for IPv6 support, for instance. Now you can see then the matter is coming out IPv6 based, basically because it's a scalable solution, and we have always been looking forward to try to enable our customers, our users, you know, to be able to be a step ahead, so that when the when the maturity comes, when the market is there, they are already in a good place, if you know what I mean, to be able to get up and running quickly.
Absolutely. And in terms of applications, so real world examples, and this is where we try to go on the podcast. So, you know, getting this out there to the man on the street, you know, what type of applications are Nordic chips working within? Can you talk about, you know, wearables, for instance, and other areas?
It's a bit difficult to say, you know. The problem is we go everywhere because we make, we make very flexible devices that can be used in a lot of different cases. So you will find the same device in a wearable, you will find it as you will find in a home automation system, maybe running different radio standards and everything. So from our point of view, we are always looking to try to make the devices so they can be used widely, because it makes it easier to for our customers to pick a platform to stay on. So we have a lot of customers who diversify on what they're doing. They're maybe not only doing wearables, they may be doing other things as well, and being able to use the same kind of hardware, or at least the same software framework when they're working with it, helps them accelerate the design, and because of that we end up on a lot of things. And one of the things we are doing a lot of business with is wearables. We go in a lot of activity trackers and so on. We have a wide range of devices, from very small ones to also quite more larger ones and more complex when it comes to code size and functionality. And because of this, we see that the smaller ones go into very simple wearables, but they also go in as the radio part in the really high-end solutions. While the larger devices go into more advanced activity trackers where you need more functionality, you want displays and so on.
Yeah, absolutely. I mentioned this to your colleague on the first part of the show, but I'm a big fan. So I've got an Aura ring on at the moment as well. Yeah. I think I can't quite remember the chipset that's actually in this, but I mentioned it prior, and it's fantastic, and it's great to see. And I think, you know, these are the types of things that consumers are wanting at the moment. Obviously, we had the big, you know, Apple event that came yesterday, and that's transpiring a lot more products and services around fitness, healthcare, monitoring, tracking, medical, etc. And it's so nice to see that this technology is advancing to the point that we can do it with lower power, energy harvesting, which is a big topic that people are talking about at the moment. And it's really exciting to see where things are going to go in the future. Fine, if I could ask you in particular, you mentioned obviously you're very passionate about IoT, and clearly a CTO of this business, a wealth and depth of knowledge. From a short range perspective, what other applications could be out there that perhaps aren't there at the moment? What, you know, where do you see this going, and what other things are you passionate about?
So I think that the first answer to your first question is, I think it can go pretty much everywhere. And I continue to be surprised about where we end up being in what kind of devices, I have to say. You know, sometimes the most fun thing about our business is seeing that, oops, someone is using us for something, right? that we never thought. And I can mention some very weird examples of things that are being used for, and that's cool. But the things that I think is really good, and which I think the COVID situation gave us a renaissance of IoT in many ways. I talked about IoT. I talked about the quiet IoT revolution, but what the COVID-19 pandemic really showed that how you solve big problems with IoT. We've seen medical devices or healthcare devices being remotely monitoring patients in different sectors. That's becoming increasingly important, both in terms of improving the outcomes, but reducing cost of healthcare as well, right? So some things I've been passionate for many years is just simple things like blood glucose monitoring, right? Diabetes is a big problem. And, be able to monitor your blood glucose continuously changes the outcomes of your treatment, and it changes your life in many ways if you do that. And I have friends that has kids who now wear continuously glucose monitoring, and they feel so much more comfortable. That's a huge thing for us, and that's an IoT product as well. You're measuring people's status every given time, and you can treat much better. Also, the thing is, I think I'm very passionate about, which I think when we're talking about the challenge we have in the world with climate change. You can tell people to stop eating meat and stop driving cars and all those things, but historically speaking, it doesn't work. I think the only way we will, and the way we need to get to, is where we use technology in sophisticated manner to reduce the energy consumption, make things smarter, improve processes, reduce waste, and all these things. And that's happening in a big scale in many, many things. You monitor energy levels to reduce your grid, you shut down power plants, or you figure out how to deal with garbage. That's happening so many places across the world. And I'm a strong believer that if we got to get to a better place, IoT is vital.
Yeah. 100% in agreement. One of the best things for me about IoT, and a little bit about my background, so I spent a lot of time in the pay TV industry, set-top boxes, integration, and no matter which way you cut it, right, it's just content, it's just media, and it's just TV, right? But whereas IoT, we're talking about the blood glucose example, it's fantastic, it's enriching people's lives, it's helping, it's really making a difference. You guys might not be aware, but on a previous show, we had a company in Germany called Dryad that are creating sensors for early detection of wildfires in the Australian outback. Can it get any better? And that's why we talk about a renaissance of IoT, as you say, during the pandemic. Proximity sensors to people, right? Yeah. One example.
It became so evident. Yeah. Although the technology was there, development was ongoing, but it somehow just kickstarted a lot of it and got a lot of acceleration, right? Suddenly things that seems to be impossible before, especially in kinds of healthcare system, which were notoriously bad at adopting new technology. Suddenly they didn't have a choice. And overnight you were able to go to the doctor without seeing the doctor, kind of thing, right? It just, wow, what happened here? The technology was there. Now it just accelerates because through the pandemic, we've seen how much value it brings.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think Nordic as a business is synonymous, and for those that know the company, are doing incredibly well, very, very nice culture, hardware, great products, etc. Where's it going for Nordic in terms of what are the other areas that you might be focusing on or going into in the future? Because you really are at the cutting edge when it comes to some of the chips and the devices and applications that your customers are using.
I want to take a stab at that just on a big macro level. Of course, when we look at how we're going to expand our business, is trying to leverage what our existing capabilities are best at. Yeah. So right now we're adding new connectivity. We're working on Wi-Fi as a new connectivity for Nordic, which is going to come later. We are broadening our portfolio of complementary devices to power management ICs because they fit very well with the rest of what we do. And we also just recently launched our services business, a cloud service, to better serve the devices themselves. And those three things are examples of how we broaden the scope. In the end of the day, I think we're going to provide the solutions that the customer needs and keep adding from the silicon through modules, through all the software we provide, to some kind of link to the cloud. So it all hangs together. And the end of the day, of course, it's all about having the customer only needing to focus on their application and their value add, and we'll take care of the rest.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I think it's customer centric, driven by what customers need, what the market is, and where we're going in the future. And that's a great macro overview of that, Svein. Paal, if I could ask you, from a technical marketing point of view, do you ever find it sometimes difficult to get across some of the benefits of the hardware and where we're going to the wider audience? Are there any pitfalls to this or misunderstandings about what IoT and sensors can do? Because we talk about the benefits a lot, but sometimes do people need to be convinced?
In some cases, yes. I would say it does happen that customers are a little bit uncertain about where to go with it. I think it's usually not that difficult to be able to convince them about the value with it. But as always, they will also always be able to. They must always be able to be able to find out that they have a business model that makes sense. That you will be able to collect a lot of data when you're doing IoT, for instance. If you can't do anything valuable with the data, they don't have the value. But normally, no, it's not too difficult to be able to convince them that this is something they will benefit from. But we're also seeing that, convenience factor and being able to ensure that systems are running and so on and running reliably is very often a good point to put the pressure on to make sure that this will be worthwhile for us, and we should adopt this kind of approach to get things working.
Yeah, it's interesting you should just say that, actually, because it's the data that's collected from the hardware which is so important, and where we've seen in the past is some businesses are great when it comes to actually the real world applications and what the consumer might be using this application for. But what are you doing with the data? Do you have data engineers on board, data scientists? Are you working with that? It's fine. If I could come back to you, do you think more could be done from a data collection and harvesting point of view? Because the sheer amount of data is incredible, isn't it, if you think about it?
Well, one thing that sort of our standard answer to that is, okay, you got to process as much data as possible in the node to reduce the amount of wireless traffic, therefore reducing power consumption and so forth. So we spend time now on looking at our portfolio devices right now, collaborating with Edge Impulse on ML, tiny ML on our devices to run sophisticated new things. And that's all about getting the grasp of all this data, right? In fact, when we look at our roadmap also from services side, the question about will you manage the data that the customers collect, the people collect as well? And that's something we're looking into. Yes, there is always the legal side of things becomes more involved when you do that. But it's about providing a solution for customers. So they can focus on what matters for them. And that may not be, moving the data to somewhere. They care about the value of the data itself and what decisions are being made based on that data.
Yeah.
And I think you touched on a very important point there, being able to do more on the edge in the devices itself. In some cases may make it a lot easier to get through these kind of legal hurdles, because the less data you stream up, the less issues you will have with privacy rights and privacy rules and so on. It will be easier to pass them because you are, sharing less. And so I think there will be different approaches going forward from customers. That some will stream a lot of data, but some of them will move more and more of the processing to the devices itself and only share what's needed, to be able to improve the services or to improve the product or to detect if the product needs to be updated. So.
It's interesting you should mention Edge Impulse, because Jan Jongbom was a previous guest, someone that I know. Right. What they're doing in machine learning and embedded is fantastic, right? And a really, really nice bunch of guys. And I would say, Paal, you're right. The more at the edge that we can do this, the less data is being sent back up. And have those legal issues, right? There's we have the GDPR Act, we have lots of issues containing the sensitivity of people's data and the security of that. I also think that if we keep in mind that this data should be used for good, right? The enrichment of people's lives, and we have that view that we're not holding on to it, or we're not doing anything unscrupulous with it, or, well, we shouldn't be, then on the whole it should be okay. But I think this leads really, really nicely onto a favorite subject of mine, which is always the security of IoT. So a lot of my background was in security and by design processes, right? I'd be interested to know your view on that, Svein, about the importance of not gold plating security as an afterthought, and it being from the ground up, and being minded of this as we, advance this ecosystem.
I have a couple of many views on this, but let me try one thing. So if I go back a couple of years in time, right, when we tried to invest in security, we didn't get a lot of response from customers thinking that this is great. We don't want to spend any money, right? And that was a few years ago, that it was very hard for someone to prove the value of their products being secure and non-secure. You can go on Amazon and pick out 2 webcams, one is secure and one is non-secure. You wouldn't know by looking at them.
Yeah.
And the unsecured one could just as well be a big fancy brand name you heard about versus some kind of no name from somewhere else, right? So you didn't know. So if you don't know if you're going to pick that or that, why are you willing to spend a few extra bucks to make it happen? Now, there's been a lot of initiatives to try and sort of get to the security architecture, the PSA initiative, the platform security architecture by ARM, to sort of get the Energy Star marking for security. And I think unless you get to that, you can actually show that your product is more secure, and therefore I'm going to pick your product in the store versus the other ones. It's hard for some companies to justify it. But that's one element which I talked a lot about before. What we've also seen in the last couple of years is the requirements of security has gone exponential, right? And whereas we would have seen it during our normal design cycles before, we implement our always get better and those stuff, it just accelerates like a rocket right now, and the attention on it is much bigger. So from our end, we need to provide better solutions on the hardware and the software side because it becomes more natural. And that's driven, I think, across the industry right now. But again, I want to get back to that Energy Star marking. At that one point when you get there, I think some of the question about whether it's secure or not and what we're going to do is going to be solved.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think from a user point of view, just to go back to your earlier comment there, it's an education process of the importance of security, it being the weakest link in the chain of the network, right? So you can buy 2 cameras, one's cheaper than the other. You don't look at it because you don't really care, but people don't understand that, by getting into your security camera, you're getting into the network, you're getting into your laptop, and so on and so forth. So I think that there's a process of that, and making sure that this is important and that people are aware of that. Do you think sometimes that people maybe are aware, but they're more driven by the cost, right? So if it was slightly more expensive, then hey, it's okay if I might get hacked, but who wants to see my living room anyway,
I don't think it's the consumer's fault. It's the companies who make the products. Because again, they're not going to tell you who's secure or non-secure. Sometimes you won't see. You think that the $100 version is more secure than the $75. It may not be the case, right? So yeah, the manufacturers are saving some cost because they don't really care that much about it. But I think, again, if you get a security rating on devices, it will change. If you think about what happened with appliances, right? At some point, I can't remember, the European Union has these codes and it's A and D's and all that kind of stuff. Didn't take very long until all the bad stuff didn't even exist. It became a natural thing that if you didn't have it, you aren't selling anything. So I think we need to get there. But it's very hard for a consumer to understand whether or not the product they're getting involved in is secure.
Yeah.
And you can see it from our side as well. When you're looking at the devices we've done in the last few years, the last generations we've done on the short range side, and the 51, the first integrated Bluetooth SoC that we did, we were complying with all of the things you needed to do for doing Bluetooth. We were able to do encrypted links and everything. We went to the 52 series. We added now a crypto cell, so we have hardware acceleration for doing cryptography, making it faster and more secure. And then we came with the 53 series, where we also went to the Cortex M33, where we have the trust zone and so on. And this is where you can see where we are upping the game continuously. And as Svein-Egil said, we are looking at the PSA rating. What can we qualify the devices to? We have we were among the first one to get the PSA 1 level. We are going to PSA 2 level on the devices today. And not only are we looking at it on the hardware side, but also we're looking very hard on the software side for how to get this done. Because we see the same thing as you said, you can't bolt the security on at the end of the process. So we're trying to make sure that the customers who do develop, they have the opportunity to start off with an example, for instance, that has the security built in, that has set it up. You have a good framework to get going, and it's about time and money, because if you need less time to build the product in a secure manner, it's more likely that you will opt for that step, that you will pull it in. Also, if it works as well or as easy to use as the non-secure version, because this has been, how to say, part of the thing you have seen in the past is that people say, yeah, but if I have to remember a password and so on, it's more difficult than if I don't have to do it. But yeah, it's added to make it more secure, and if the burden to make the security work becomes too high, then people may opt out from it. We try to make it easier to just keep it in, if you know what I mean. You don't necessarily see it in the same way as extra work or lower usability by the customer and so on. And people pick it up because it doesn't cost anything, and it's good. It makes the product better.
I completely agree with both of you on that. I think the problem that you have from a user consumer point of view is fatigue, password fatigue, right? So people have policies, don't they? You know, in companies sometimes you need to change your password every 2 weeks, every 3 weeks. But you hear stories of people writing down their password on a post-it note because they can't remember the password because they're having to change it so often. I think it needs to be timely, it needs to be relevant, and needs to stress the importance of that, and to enable that to happen, because otherwise you do. And I think we can all admit it, right? I don't have a unique password for every single device and login. You know, I like to think I've got a good memory, but there's no way that I could remember all of that, and therefore I'd have to write it down. And you know, it's academic, and it just seems defeatist. But it's nice to hear that, as you said, that continual advancement from Nordic's point of view about security, PSA, first to get PSA 1, all the way up, and it being a progressional activity is lovely, because as you're saying, sometimes people don't see security as this sexy kind of valuable thing. They kind of see it as a bit of an afterthought. Well, we'll do something on it. Whereas really, I think, yes, it comes down to the consumers. Yes, it comes down to the customers. But it's having it built in by design, early point, and not as an afterthought, but as an integral part to the building of that to start with. So that's great to hear. On that note, so I'm curious. So Nordic, been involved short range for a long time. We spoke to Martin talking about long range. What can we expect to see in the short to medium term, and where's Nordic heading? I know that you've recently opened a new office, etc.
I mean, bigger, better, faster, lower power, sort of more.
All of the above and more, yeah?
Yeah, power. I'm a little hell-bent on this big trends, right? So the devices of tomorrow's got to use less power per whatever it does than today's, right? Radio's got to be better. The processing power's got to increase, right? It's going to be more memory for people to write their code. There's going to be more features on the devices than there used to be. It's going to be better security. That's the overall theme, right? And as I think if you seen the announcement, as I said earlier, sort of short range addressing, multiple protocols in the short range space, that be Bluetooth Low Energy, of course, Zigbee, Thread. Now Matter is very important for us for the smart home and these ecosystems. Wi-Fi comes on board eventually when we are ready with some development there. Then that's where it goes, right? Faster, better, all the time. I think you'll see from a software point of view, more functionality, more things. It just keeps adding to it. And sometimes I feel like, aren't the customers going to do anything because we're writing all the software for them? But again, it's back to that point, is letting them focus on what's valued, and we will take care of the mundane and the more plumbing that needs to be there and be robust. Paul, you probably have some more to add on this.
No, I think you summed it up quite nicely. I think, but I do believe that the first couple of big things that are coming from our side is going with Matter for home automation. We believe this is going to be driving a lot of new activity in this segment, and it's basically because, as you said, it's a standard that will allow people to plug more things together. And I think one of the things that make me very positive about this one is that we have a lot of the big companies are backing it, so it doesn't end up as another standard supported by some of the vendors. It's a standard that getting supported by all of them, and we've been in Matter for quite some time. We're seeing this as a good thing. We are going to be showcasing it as soon as we have the opportunity to do that at live events and so on. And the second thing that I think is coming as well, and that's going to probably open up a lot of new opportunities, is Bluetooth low energy audio. So everybody uses Bluetooth audio all the time now, but the fact that we now can do, or soon will be able to do Bluetooth audio on Bluetooth low energy devices, it will be improving the power consumption and all these kind of things for headsets and earbuds and all these things. But it's probably also going to open up a lot of new areas of products that we haven't even looked at, because you will be able to have a small device that can do, for instance, sensors and whatever, with incredibly low power consumption, and then gear up and do audio in a way that you haven't been able to do before. So I would I'm just waiting for the first guy who comes up with a brilliant solution for some kind of funny toy or whatever, where they utilize these kind of functionality in a way that we didn't foresee when the spec was being written. And this is what always happens when you come with this new enabling functionality. Somebody dreams up a new product that you didn't even think about, and it's good, and it's funny, and it sells a lot.
Yeah. Thank you so much. It's a great overview, and I really appreciate the answers. I think the Bluetooth low energy audio is a bit of a game changer. Svein, as you said, bigger, faster, stronger, better. I think I share the same. I think for me it's renewables, right? How much can we do this with renewable materials as well, right? I think that's a big thing. The lower power and the energy harvesting is something that I'm really keen on, and really passionate to see in the future, because I think some of the issues that we have with IoT devices that are maybe put out in the field is that the battery life is maybe what 2, 3, 4 years, right? But there are going to be use cases whereby we won't be able to redeploy that. So the energy harvesting aspect for me is really, really useful.
I want to echo that just before you drop, is that energy harvesting is important, and it is really enabled by the underlying devices that solves the problem, being low power enough to be able to find in some source of energy that does it. Now we're talking about short range today, but I've seen energy harvesting solutions for long range as well, over LTM, for instance, which is very, 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 very cool. And I didn't really thought that was we were going to see, because that's another level of power consumption, right, in terms of cellular. But we're seeing those who are utilizing technologies, energy harvesting technologies, fully self-powered devices running cellular too.
In my mind, that is a logical thing, because it's even further away. It's even more expensive to move out and change the battery, Yeah. And that's the thing, is I think the guy said they replaced the lighting in the atrium in our building, and somebody said the cost was around 5,000 euros to do it, because they had to get guys in with the lift because it's 4 stories tall. They spent a week doing it. It's really expensive. It's like the cost of the light bulb is nothing compared to the cost of maintaining it. And I think these are the kind of application spaces that will open up when you can say that, place it and it's gone, and don't even think about it. It will run for the next 10 years.
Yeah, precisely.
Lot of opportunities that suddenly, how to say, materializes.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Guys, I think we could probably talk all afternoon about these things, but I'm so appreciative of both of you of coming on to the show today. It's been great having you on, and especially this two-part special with Nordic Semiconductors. So thank you very much, Svein-Egil. Thank you, Paul. For our listeners and viewers, if they're on YouTube, Paul, where can we find out more about Nordic Semiconductor?
I think if you're not familiar with what we do, I think the first place to go to is our website. We are on all of the social media, of course, so you'll find us on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, YouTube. You'll also find us on Instagram and so on, you know. But if you want to make sure you find the right one, go to our website, nordicsemi.com, and you'll be able to go there. If you're looking for technical content and so on, we have our own sphere for the developers called DevZone. Which is extremely popular. There's a lot of people, a lot of activity there. We do blogs there, all this kind of content for getting people up and running. And of course, we usually go to all the big trade shows, you know. So as soon as those open again, we will be around.
Good.
But for sure, check us out on social media. It's a lot of activity on all our channels.
Fantastic. Thank you once again for coming on the show.
Thank you for having us.
As usual, don't forget to subscribe, share, like, and get involved in the conversation on the podcast. We're on YouTube, Spotify, all the major formats. Just search for the IoT Podcast. We are the #1 IoT podcast in the world, with many, many more episodes coming out. And until the next time, cheers.